They say the night hides more than shadows. It hides the truth.
Welcome to Mr. Haunting Whispers, where real crimes, true horrors, and restless spirits speak through the silence. Listen closely, because sometimes the whispers are real.
Memory is a strange thing. We think of it as something that fades, like old photographs left too long in the sun. But memories don't always fade. Some of them linger. They wait in the quiet places, the forgotten rooms of our minds, whispering, echoing, wanting to be remembered. Tonight, we open those doors, stories of sound and silence, of voices that refuse to die, and moments that never really ended. Sometimes the past doesn't let go. Sometimes it records itself, waiting for someone, anyone, to press play. These are the echoes of the forgotten, and once you hear them, you'll never truly forget them again. I never really believed in ghosts, not in the floating sheet sense at least, but I do believe that sound can hold memories, and that sometimes those memories remember you back. It started when I went home after my father's funeral. The house was quiet, unnaturally so. Every tick of the clock, every creak of the floorboard sounded louder than it ever had. Grief changes the acoustics of a house. It turns silence into something heavy, almost alive. My father had been a sound engineer for nearly 40 years. When I was a kid, he used to take me into his little basement studio. Walls covered with egg cartons, shelves full of reels, cassettes, microphones, and these strange metal spools that looked like time capsules. He used to say, "Sound never dies, son. It just waits to be heard again." Those words didn't mean much back then. Now they won't stop echoing in my head. While sorting through his things, I found a wooden box labeled in his handwriting, "Archives Personal." Inside were half a dozen reel-to-reel tapes, neatly stacked, each with little labels written in pencil: test tone, interview, soundbed 1984. But one stood out. The label was faded, barely legible, just 3 words, "Play when I'm gone." At first I thought it was some kind of farewell message, a sentimental recording, maybe a voice letter or a final note. But the thing about my father was, he didn't believe in goodbyes. I found the old reel player under his workbench, coated in dust. It still worked, surprisingly. The motor groaned, but the reel spun, the tape feeding through the head with that dry hiss I hadn't heard in years. That sound alone pulled me back decades. When I pressed play, I braced myself to hear his voice instead. I heard mine. I froze. The voice that came through the static was undoubtedly mine. Younger, maybe early 20s, but there was no way that was possible. The tape itself looked like it had been recorded 40, maybe 50 years ago. "If you're listening," the voice said, crackling through the hiss, "then he's gone, and now you have to remember." I paused the tape. Every rational part of me screamed that it was a coincidence, a trick of memory, a similar voice, a degraded recording that happened to mimic mine, but I couldn't stop listening. "You don't know me yet," the voice continued, "but you will, and when you do, don't go into the basement after midnight." I stopped it again. This wasn't grief. This was something else. The next night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the whirring of the tape reels, the faint hum that seemed to fill the house. At exactly midnight, I heard movement downstairs. A shuffle, a soft metallic click. When I went down, the reel player was spinning. The tape was moving on its own. No one else was in the house. I stood there, cold crawling up my spine, as the voice came back through the static, whispering now, almost urgent. "He's coming down the stairs. You have to hide." I looked toward the stairway. It was empty, but behind me I heard a floorboard groan. I turned. Nothing. The tape continued. Don't let him find you this time. Please." There was a long pause. Then, the sound of my own voice gasping, like someone being dragged away, a scrape, a thud, silence, then, faintly, another voice, older, lower. "Sound never dies, son. It just waits." The next morning, I unplugged the real player. I packed it back into the box, taped it shut, and carried it out to the curb. Trash pickup was Monday. That night, I woke to the faint whir of spinning reels somewhere beneath the floorboards. Playing something waiting to be heard again. When my grandmother passed away, the house came to me. It sat alone on a hill just outside town. A weathered, two-story home that hadn't seen paint or laughter in at least a decade. The porch sagged, the windows wept dust, and when the wind moved through the trees, the whole place sighed like it was tired of standing. I hadn't visited in years. We were never close, not really. Grandma Rose had always been distant. She loved her garden more than she loved company. She wrote letters more than she spoke when she did talk. Her voice always had that faint tremor of someone who'd learned long ago to whisper around secrets. After the funeral, I came to clean the place out. Just a weekend job, or so I thought. But there's something about empty houses that changes time. Every creak, every draft, every small echo. It all feels stretched, like the house is still breathing around you, even after the people are gone. The first night, I slept in the upstairs bedroom, the one that used to be my mother's. The bed still smelled faintly of old lavender, and the wallpaper was peeling in thin curls, revealing the plaster beneath. At about 2 a.m., I woke up to a faint, scratching sound coming from downstairs. Not an animal. It was too rhythmic for that. Almost like paper brushing against brick. When I went down, the living room was empty, but the fireplace was warm. That didn't make sense. I hadn't lit it. And yet, faint wisps of smoke curled up the chimney, leaving a dusty scent of burned paper hanging in the air. I remember whispering, "Hello?" But my voice felt small, swallowed by the house. When I got closer, I saw the faint outline of something tucked deep in the ashes. A small metal key, still warm to the touch. The next morning, I found the key's lock. It fit a small wooden trunk hidden behind the firewood stack, its edges blackened with soot. Inside were bundles of old letters tied with ribbons, yellow, brittle paper, sealed with wax and smoke stains. Each one was addressed by hand in my grandmother's neat cursive. To Samuel, 1968. To Mother, 1971. To Clara, 1979. I didn't recognize any of the names, except the last one. The final letter was addressed to me, but it wasn't dated. My name was written in the same elegant cursive. Only this time, the ink looked fresh, as if it had been written recently. I opened one of the older letters first. To Samuel. The paper crackled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was clean, deliberate. "You told me you heard them in the smoke again? I told you to stop burning the names. They always come back when you burn the names." I frowned. Another letter. To Mother. "The fire keeps them quiet, but only for a while. I can still hear them whisper through the ashes at night." And another. "I don't write these for the living anymore. I write them so the house remembers." By the time I reached the last one, the one with my name, my hands were shaking. The seal broke with a soft snap. Inside, the ink shimmered faintly, as if it hadn't dried. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. You must not burn the letters. Promise me that, child. Never burn them again." There was a blot of ink, as though she'd hesitated. Then, "But if you already did, I'm so sorry." At that moment, I heard something from the fireplace, a faint whisper, then another. Dozens of voices, layered and thin, like breaths speaking from inside the walls. They weren't saying words exactly, more like murmuring syllables that sounded like my name. The air turned heavy, warm. Ashes began to stir on the hearth, lifting in small spirals like smoke in reverse. And in them, faintly, shapes began to form. Faces. I dropped the letter and stumbled back, heart hammering. The trunk's lid slammed shut on its own. Every candle in the room flickered out, leaving just the orange glow from the hearth, pulsing like something alive. Then I heard her voice, my grandmother's, clear, calm, and close, whispering right behind me. "I told you not to burn the names." The next morning the trunk was gone, the fireplace was cold, and in its ashes, 6 new envelopes, all sealed, all addressed in my handwriting. Each with names I didn't recognize except the last one. It was addressed to you. There's a sound that lingers long after silence, the kind that doesn't fade, but waits. Maybe it's the echo of a name we were never meant to hear again. Maybe it's the weight of a memory refusing to rest. A voice, a note, a whisper caught between time and truth. Tonight we listen to those echoes, the ones that lived in rooms, in wires, in walls, and in the fragile space between forgiveness and forgetting. But some echoes don't belong to the past. Some reach forward, calling us from where we haven't yet been. And if you ever wake in the middle of the night, hearing something soft beneath the quiet, a voice that knows your name and speaks like it remembers you, don't answer it, because sometimes the things that whisper in the dark aren't trying to be heard. They're trying to return. You've been listening to Mr. Haunting Whispers, real stories, real fears. Until next time, keep your lights low and your mind open.
You've been listening to Mr. Haunting Whispers, where every truth leaves a scar. If the story unsettled you, good. That means you were listening. Subscribe and stay close to the dark, because the next whisper might be for you.